Hello.
Hey there, I see a couple people in there.
Thank you thank you so much joining the webinar. So we're gonna start soon.
So I'm Yolanda Obannon. This is YoWangdu. We should have introduced ourselves when our faces were on, but we're so happy that you're here with us today. And we'll just get started with our webinar, which is on why travel to Tibet in the winter. And what's in this webinar is that we're going to talk about what people think are the challenges of winter travel, what it's actually like to travel to Tibet in the winter, and how we can help you do it. So here's a little bit about us.
We are a Tibetan American couple who lives in the Bay Area. We are passionate about Tibetan culture and Tibetan education for Tibetan kids.
So Lobsang has lived in Tibet for 17 years. I lived for a year in the Tibetan community in Dharamsala, India, and I've traveled 4 times to Tibet. So we're committed to helping people travel to Tibet easily and safely, because there's a lot of not easy and not safe travel going on to Tibet. And at the same time, we're very, very committed to supporting local Tibetan businesses. So let's get started with what people think about winter travel is like in Tibet.
Basically, I think most people think, Tibet is a high elevation, very cold, almost impossible go to Tibet during the winter time.
Yeah. And if you guys are like me, you probably thought that it's, frigid conditions, like kind of like mountain climbing with pickaxes, up a glacier, or these poor yaks in a blizzard in the Changtang. And it's very true that there are some places that are too cold in the winter, and you're looking at one of them. This is the Domala Pass at Mount Kailash. And the road to Mount Kailash is okay, but the Domala Pass becomes snowed in the winter, and you can't do the Kailash trek. And there are some other places that are not reliably open. Like you can see, this is Lake Namso. It's really beautiful, but it's not, you can get to it sometimes, but it's not reliable. Like sometimes the pass to it will be snowed in, and on a day's notice, the local government will shut down the road, so you wouldn't be able to come. Also, there's no local accommodations there in the wintertime, which is actually not that bad of a thing, because the local accommodations are pretty awful at Lake Namso.
Yeah, there's a tent. So in the wintertime, it's almost impossible. You can stay in the tent.
Yeah.
So it's freezing.
You wouldn't want to stay there.
Yeah.
Oh, another thing is that the road to Nepal is also not it's more likely to get closed in the winter. The Tibetan guides that we work with say it's not recommended from November to the end of March, because it can one of the passes can get snowed in, and you can do it sometimes, but it's not guaranteed to be open, so you wouldn't want to base your trip plans on that. But the Lhasa area can be quite pleasant in the wintertime.
Yeah, and normally Lhasa weather is pretty good during the wintertime. We don't get that much snow, like maybe 2-3 times a year. Even if it snowed, just melts right away. So not that cold. If you lived in Canada, Toronto or New York, compared to their winters, nothing in Lhasa.
And I'll talk about a little bit the exact temperatures in a minute, but I just want to give a shout out to Ellen Evans, who took this picture and kindly shared it with us. She's traveled a lot in winter in Tibet. So the average winter temperatures in Lhasa, as you see, are pretty decent. The highs in Fahrenheit are 44 to 52, and centigrade at 6 to 11. And then the lows are 14 to 23 Fahrenheit, which is cold, and -10 to -5. So what you get are mostly sunny, very rare rain or snow, and strong sun during the days, cold nights. And this is another of Ellen's nice pictures. So what we're talking about, I just want to be clear, when we talk about the winter, we're really only talking about part of the winter. We're talking November, December, January, and we don't include February in that for two reasons. One is that it can be windy and the not so pleasant temperature-wise, and then the other one.
Also on Tibetan New Year's, normally many times Tibetan New Year's is not foreigner allowed to travel to Tibet because celebration. So for some reason Chinese government and they shut down the Tibet during the February Tibetan New Year time. Sometimes, not always.
And this year, Tibetan New Year is on February 5th, we believe, and our folks inside Tibet are telling us it's quite likely that that Tibet will be closed, possibly for almost the whole of February this year. So when we're talking about winter travel, we really are just talking November, December, January.
Yeah, it's really unpredictable during February. And then March is always closed.
That's right. And just to give you an idea of why we also don't really recommend February, just for the past, I'll tell you, in 2016, Lhasa was closed from February 20th. In 2015, it was closed from the 10th. In 2014, it was closed from the 20th. And in 2013, it was closed for the whole of February again. So just taking all this one step further, we would say that winter is actually a really good time to visit Lhasa and the areas around Lhasa.
The one reason is really few tourists because there's not that many Chinese. Normally during the summer and autumn, they're pouring Chinese tourists into Tibet, so sometimes it could be really unpleasant.
Right. And another reason is that a lot of nomads visit during the wintertime.
Right. Nomads, normally I think they don't have to work in as much as summertime and autumn, so they come to Lhasa to see the monasteries and temple. They do their ritual in Lhasa. Mainly, everybody wants to see Chowa Shakyamuni, which is the main statue in Lhasa.
I am going to stop my video. Okay. And also this allows you, because there's, fewer tourists, more nomads, obviously you get a more authentic and kind of real experience in Tibet. Another reason that it's a good time to travel is that the prices are cheaper. You can get, you can get up to 30% off on tours and hotels. And on the entrance fees, which can really add up to the various monasteries, they add fees up to 50% off, which is pretty great. So all these things are really not a problem or actually a good thing. The weather, the cost, the crowds, and the authentic experience. So then you have to ask, is there actually any challenge for winter travel? Is there a problem?
I think there's always challenging, finding the reliable Tibetan owned travel agency. That's the always problem. It doesn't matter summer or winter.
Yeah, and so since you have to book an official tour when you travel to Tibet and your whole experience depends on the agency, your biggest challenge is finding a quality, reliable Tibetan-owned agent. And this is actually a burning issue anytime you travel to Tibet, not just in the winter. So this is something that we help a lot of travelers with.
Yeah, we have been working with the Tibetan travel agencies since 2013. So we helped hundreds travelers to go to Tibet. So also we love to help other people's local business to bring more business and logo inside Tibet.
So the way that we do that is we give an introduction to Tibetan-owned agents that we know, like, and trust. And I don't know if we're going to be able to do this, but we might have to open it up after a little while for your we might have to
Your
open
question?
it up, unmute everybody to get your questions. But I was hoping to get the questions in the chat. So if you can, send your questions in the chat, and we'll answer them in a minute. So, and while you're doing that, and if we can, we'll come back around in just a minute. So while we're doing that, we're going to tell you about how and why we help people travel to Tibet. So one reason that we help people is that we know the pain of a bad agent. This is me at Everest in 2007, I think. And on this trip, I had by chance, this was the time when you can actually sign up for an agent after you got to Lhasa. Things were kind of a little slightly more open then. And I wasn't, I didn't know people, so I just got on with like 2 Korean guys. We hired up an agent, like didn't know anything. And off we went with our driver, with our driver and our guide. And it turns out the guide was a Tibetan guy, young Tibetan guy, very sweet, but it must have been his first trip. He didn't know anything about traveling to Everest. And, you know, so he couldn't help us, like, what is this? What is that? What's going to happen? Blah, blah, blah. He couldn't help us at all. So that was okay, that, you know, not ideal, obviously, but it turned out to be kind of dangerous because he didn't have any knowledge about altitude sickness, and he didn't prepare anybody for altitude sickness. And he, in fact, was very underprepared for the weather at Everest Base Camp. So you see what I'm wearing, which you can't even really know, but that's like I had on maybe 3 layers under that, plus thermals and like multiple socks, all these things. And I took my hat off just briefly for the photo. But this guy had on just the thinnest jacket. And also one of the guys in our, you know, the driver had on a good jacket, he knew, kind of thing. But the other guy, he just was inexperienced. And so what happened actually was that one of my Korean friends developed altitude sickness in the night, and it's just by sheer chance that his friend had some oxygen, woke up, and was savvy enough to give it to him. I also had oxygen, and I knew that the guy was awake, but I didn't know him very well, and I didn't really know what was going on. But so anyway, it was kind of a scary experience. And in retrospect, I would never travel with somebody who wasn't much more savvy about the whole situation, you know, then. So since then, I've done a lot of research, and we've talked to a lot of our friends in Tibet so that we know who the good agents are and the good guides. So another reason that we can help people is that we too have a unique background and experience.
Like, we had, as we said, we are Tibetan American couple, so I know Tibetan culture really well, and Yolanda has been living with, we have been married 20 years, so she has been Tibetan 4 times, and also we have been living together a long time. We both know Tibetan culture really well, and also we know the American or Western point of view, how to travel to different areas. So I think we can help those travelers.
And we've done also, in addition to our experience and our connections, we've just done many hundreds of hours of research ourselves, and spent a lot of time working since 2013, working very closely every day with Tibetan agents, in Tibet. We know the best ones, and we're happy to share our knowledge because it helps you, which is great, and it also, very importantly, helps Tibetan local businesses. So it's just this total win-win. So we've helped people like you have a great Tibet adventures all year round, summer, winter, spring, fall. And the way we do that is to introduce you to a reliable Tibetan-owned agency to give you the trip that you really want. And if you want help with an introduction, and we see some questions coming up, great. And if you want help with an introduction, you just go to this form, YoWangdu.com/referral. .html. It takes about 5 minutes to fill it out, maybe 10. You just fill it out as the best you can. There's like maybe, I don't know, 10 questions, 8. So a number of questions. When are you going? Where are you going? Blah, blah, blah. If you don't know, just guess something and then put in your comments that you need more help to know about it. You don't have to have everything filled out. It doesn't matter. And we'll refer you to a travel agent, and they're extremely kind and helpful. So, not to worry at all if the information's not all spot on. So what the referral does for you is it helps you avoid what is truly an impossible task of trying to find a good agent online.
Yeah, basically online they have so much scams, and also many of Chinese travel agencies pretend like Tibetan travel agency. So it's really hard to know. If you search on Google, Chinese are very savvy, marketing savvy, so they will get the fast thing. So you really never know.
And it also helps you feel secure that you're going to get a safe, well-organized trip. It helps you save your time for the fun parts of planning instead of wasting your time worrying and stressing and being unsure. And I see some of these questions coming up, and we will absolutely answer that related to this. And then importantly, it really helps you travel ethically because you are supporting local Tibetan businesses. You are supporting Tibetan-owned businesses who frequent Tibetan-owned hotels and Tibetan-owned restaurants, Tibetan-owned shops. So it's really the most ethical way that you could travel to Tibet. And just very quickly, and then we'll come to your questions. So once you complete the form, just so you know, you get an email from us introducing you to one of the agents that we work with, and then you'll be directly contacted by them within 24 to 72 hours. And then the agency will work with you by email, phone, or WeChat to customize and plan your trip. And again, it's never too early to start. I mean, we have people starting 1.5 years, 2 years early. It's just good and helpful for you. So let's go to your questions. So we see the first one says, hi, Yolanda, and I'm sorry, who is this from? Vinay. Hi, thank you. So, hi, Yolanda and Libsam. Thanks for this session. It was very informative. Thank you very much. So, I'm a U.S. citizen from the Bay Area. Oh, just like us. I am planning to go to Mount Kailash in the month of July. I hope that is a good time. Also, okay, let's start with that.
The July is, I don't think it's July, definitely you can go, but it could be rainy.
Yeah, so there's two. There's one big plus and two big downs to going to Kailash in July. One is that it can be rainy because this is it's a little bit the monsoon time, and monsoon is not like Indian monsoon, so it's like
rain.
It'll rain. It may rain some, right? But the other negative is that most large Indian pilgrimage groups go in July and August. And so there's likely to be more people on the mountain. I mean, that could be a gratifying experience to just have a lot more pilgrims with you. So in July, that's that. And then I hope that's a good time. Also, what is the best time to get the Tibet visa? As there's a lot of confusion on the Chinese visa. Is it recommended to go from Nepal or fly from China? It depends. So the best way very briefly, this is a bigger discussion than we can do here. And we have a lot on our website about this. And I'll make myself a note right now, and I'll add this on our Facebook page about visa and permit. So basically, you should know there's two things that you need when you go to Tibet. One, you need a Chinese visa, like a visa to enter China. And then you need a special Tibet travel permit when you're going to the Tibetan Autonomous Region. So the visa to enter China, you get on your own through the local Chinese consulate.
Consular, yeah.
So like if you're in the Bay Area, you go to the Chinese embassy and you get your Chinese visa. And that can take as few as 5 days, but you want to
get it as soon as possible.
You want to get it much faster than that, partly because you need it then to give to the agency. They need a copy of your visa before they can start processing your permit. So the Tibetan travel agency processes your permit for you. And that's great. They take care of all of that. So the part that you have to do is get your visa. Now, is it recommended to go from Nepal or to fly in from China? That's also a little, it depends. Probably.
We normally prefer to go from China because, like, if you really want to climatize, if you go to Nepal, it's really hard to climatize. If you go through China, normally we recommend to go through Shilin and it stays 2 nights in Shilin and Shilin. So then go to Tibet, take the train. We're normally recommended, but up to you.
Another Tibetans say Xiling, by the way, and the Chinese write it Xining, Xining, just so if you happen to be looking at that. So that's a really good point Luxon's making. The other point is that you need to, you have to consider that when you go from Nepal, you need 3 days, at least in Kathmandu, to get what is called a Chinese, a Tibet group visa. Yeah. And the important thing about this group visa is that it cuts down the amount of time, like it won't be as long as if you get a visa from China.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Basically, if you get it, if you're trying to get like, let's say you have Chinese visa, you're going through Kathmandu, then you have to apply. You're gonna
you'll lose
the Chinese visa.
They will invalidate your Chinese visa. So unless there's a burning reason for you to be in Kathmandu, we suggest going through China, like Beijing, Shanghai, Chengdu, whatever. And then Andrea says hello to both. Hello, thank you. I was hoping to go during the Tibetan New Year. Do you have any idea when they will give the final yes or no to foreigners? I think you can pretty much guess it's going to be a no. And gosh, when will they tell us that for sure? It could be very close to the time that they would say it's no. What I recommend that you do is, like, if you're not already in touch with one of our agents, like, go through the referral form, get in touch with one of our agents, and then ask them, when they'll know. And they're on the ground. They'll be the quickest with that information. But I will tell you honestly, I don't think it's good chances to go during the Tibetan New Year this year.
Yeah, you could take the risk, but it's really hard to know. They won't tell you.
Yeah. And then, and please understand, everybody, I think you all know, like, it's very, very, when you're dealing with the Tibetan agents, you have to be very careful about what you say. In fact, you don't even really want to say, will the government close Tibet or something like that. Issues are very, very sensitive. So I think when you're phrasing it to them, you might just say, will Tibet be open during the Tibetan New Year? Right? I think that's okay to say that. Okay. Okay, we have another question and let us know if Vinay, thank you. You said that. Thanks for the clarification. So we have another question from Susan. So is Tibet Vista a reputable agency? Susan, I'm sorry, but to say honestly, we say no. They're Chinese owned, and they have some really sketchy marketing practices, in our opinion. And they've we don't want to badmouth anybody, but number one, they're Chinese owned, and we always recommend that you go with a Tibetan owned agency. They tried very hard, which is one reason that we're not real psyched about them. They try very hard to look like a Tibetan owned company. They talk about that they're local and that they hire Tibetan guides and all this kind of stuff, but they are Chinese owned. And we're not a fan of the Vista. So Fernando, hello. We are planning to go in early October. How does the Golden Week celebrations affect facilities 1 week before and 1 week after celebrations? Is it better to avoid traveling? So I think what you mean is you don't plan to go during Golden Week, but you plan to go either before or after Golden Week, and you're asking about traveling during that time. I think the 100% answer is that we don't really know. Oh wait, no. I did go.
Yeah, you went after.
I went just before, and I will tell you, it started. I was leaving Lhasa on like October, whatever it was, October 1st or whatever day it was, and we've got 8 minutes left, so we'll try to answer as what we can. But I think we're doing good. So it got noticeably more crowded on the day. Now that may have been the first day of the travel time. So I would guess, just from that experience, I would guess that it bleeds over a few days before and after. So that would be my suggestion, that to try to avoid those first few days before and after.
First week of October.
Yeah, I don't think a week, like, what, I don't know what day it is, but let's say it's the 1st through the 8th or 7th or something. I would avoid, let's say, until the 9th or maybe 10th or something, and then go for it. Then I'm not basing that on anything great, that's my little bit of recommendation. Okay, thank you, Andrea. Okay, anybody else? Okay, so in theory, you should all be unmuted. So if anybody who was not able to ask a question, or if you just want to ask your question by voice, you can go for it.
So Yolanda, this is Arthur. So as I recall, you went to Kailash in September?
That's correct.
Yeah, so I was thinking of doing it this coming year. So I was September, October, that is, it's from what you've discussed, it sounds a suitable period of time.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, it's September, October is great, and if you're in the far west of Tibet, avoid Golden Week. That's fine. But I was starting to say you could be okay if you're that far out there. But if you're, I have to say that I went in what was supposed to be like just an ideal time, was like the 3rd week of September is when I was at Kailash, and we couldn't see the mountain. It didn't really rain, but we did. We didn't see. I mean, and it was an amazing experience. Like, I would do it again. But we didn't see the mountain, so it's just really it's kind of a crapshoot, I'm afraid. But that should be, like, your chances are really good if you went at that time.
Yeah. I only have one comment about the whole Chinese visa thing. If there's no issues with you, I would just tell everybody, make sure you put down on the little block that says, besides tourist visa, that you make sure you just articulate 10-year visa. I got mine in 3 days right here in San Francisco, and I had to wait 2 hours to submit the paperwork and an hour to pick it up, but 3 days later I had it, and I made multiple trips since then, and it just flew. I just sailed right on through. Great recommendation.
Yeah. I'm glad you reminded me. When you apply for your Chinese visa, don't mention a single word about anything related to Tibet. So you just say that you're going to Shanghai and Beijing and Xi'an and Chengdu, whatever, and then don't mention anything about going to Tibet. You're allowed, the Chinese government allows you to change your mind, in quotation marks, once you get your visa, right?
Yeah.
So that's what's going to happen. If you do, and I say this because if you do mention anything about Tibet, you will almost, I've never seen a case where you've not been denied. I mean, you will be denied almost certainly if you mention that you're going to Tibet and you almost certainly won't be. I mean, we've helped hundreds of people, and I've never had anybody be denied except people who mentioned that they were going to Tibet.
That's
right?
correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I would just mention is that, including me, and I saw a lot of people in line, we were all rejected when we submitted our paperwork because they did not like photo. They are very insistent that it's a solid white background, and I don't know about other consulates, but here in San Francisco, they have a photo booth in the consulate itself, and it's well spent $10.
Right. Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, we got one more question. Thank you so much. Those are great suggestions. So we got a question from Susan. I'm 63, planning to go to Everspace Camp. Is there anything special I should prepare? No, Susan, I mean, fortunately, unfortunately, there's no, the risk factors for, I assume you're talking about altitude, and the risk factors for altitude are not age related, and they're not fitness related. Even it's pretty much genetic. So I mean, obviously get yourself, the biggest thing I would do is like take warm clothing, because that was one of the problems with the 2 times that I've seen people have bad altitude sickness. They were both like, cold. They were both very underdressed, and it can be very, very cold at Everspace Camp.
I think the altitude sickness is also one thing is when you get into bed, you need to rest when you get there first. You know, you have to really well rest. Otherwise, it's going to get in trouble. And also, you know, when you're ascending, you have to ascending very slowly. Like, as we mentioned, you're going through ceiling.
Yeah. So I don't know why, but we're trying to be public. There we are, but we can't see ourselves for some reason. Okay, and so we have just like 2 minutes left. Does anybody else have a question that they'd like to ask?
Yeah, one quick question. This is Vinay here. Are you going to share this recording? Because there's so much information. I just want to make sure I didn't, because I was not able to capture the notes. So, are you going to share the recording?
Absolutely, we'll be happy to, and you'll get some emails after the recording, and so after this video, and you'll get a recording. You should get that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thanks for all the information. This is good. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. So unless anybody else has anything, we're going to jump off. Great. Thank you all so much. You've been fantastic. And if you have more questions, just shoot them to us in the email or in Facebook. That would be fine.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
You enjoy it. Bye.
Ciao. Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.